We are alive. Got it. Admit. All right, we'll get started here. Hey, everybody. It is Thursday's Roundtable discussion mastermind.
Got it.
We're going to get a replay here on YouTube as we go in. Hey, Brittany, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Guys. Yeah, you as well. So this is Thursday's Mastermind Roundtable. Our whole goal here is just get together and have a conversation, and hopefully anybody who is watching this in replay, live, or participating pulls out some great gold nuggets of information. At the end of the day, we want people to absorb knowledge and then take what they learn and apply it so that they can see the benefits of it. So as we get started here, I'm super excited to welcome my guest, Chris, here. As we talk about leadership. And this is one of the topics that I know I've had the pleasure of meeting with Chris several times in person and obviously online chatting and conversation. I know that, Chris, you hold a leadership role within your organization, and you've been doing a lot of study, learning, and implementation on the topic of leadership. And what better topic? You know what I mean?
True.
I think it's so powerful. In fact, I'm going to shift the view over to our gallery view here with the three of us on here. But I think about the individual, and maybe just you're in a position and you're focusing on yourself and trying to improve that. And then I think about the shift of a collective group, a community of people, and the individuals who sort of, as we would say, rise to the top and help lead that group in a specific direction. If you can take an opportunity to just introduce yourself, let everybody know who maybe has never met you before, who you are, what you do, etc., from what you can tell, and then we'll jump into the leadership side.
Sure. Of course, my name is Chris Inman. My wife, you may know, I met Guy and ER through Shuffle and through Kathy, my wife. I had the pleasure of sitting down and talking with you guys before on leadership and stuff of that nature. I think we share a common interest, a common background. So we're trying to be better leaders within our organization and figure out what best works for us and what works for our group.
Yeah.
I've got 11 years active duty military for the Air Force, where I was eventually made it to a leadership role in that organization. I served 2 years on the reserve side. So being part of a team, as far as that folks, and all having a common goal to work toward, has been with me for several years since graduating high school. So after my military service, I worked around a couple of jobs in the civilian world, and then also joined my current employer, L3 Harris, in 2004, and I've been with them for 18 years now, and been in a leadership position for about 17 out of the 18 years. So, leadership and team building has always been kind of passionate for me, because you get a group of people that work toward a common goal. And that seems to be important. You don't always get to pick who's on your team, but then you got to work with those people and have buy-in and accomplish something together. I also spent a couple years leading a volunteer organization for my local retriever club. Congratulations on your new retriever.
Yeah.
And there's nothing much harder than leading a group of volunteers. So that was a challenging, and trying to run that organization for a couple of years, that was a challenge also. So that being said, as leaders or as team builders of that nature, it's always, you can't stop growing. You have to continue to learn and better yourself if you're going to continue leading people. And especially, I see that as I get older and the workforce is younger. There's challenges there that have to be overcome, and understanding that. So you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to your organization, regardless of your organization promotes leadership or team building of that. You owe it to your team and yourself to read and learn. And there's so many good resources out there.
Yeah, I think there's so much gold in just what you're talking about, Chris, as I absorb what you're saying. And a few things, right? If you're part of a team, there's going to be a leader within that team, and that could be you. if you want to take the initiative to go down that. You don't always get to pick the people who are part of your team. And I think that's a challenge that always needs to be overcome, right? You've got different personalities, people who need to be worked with in different ways. And then the personal development, I think this is a big thing we talk about all the time is, one, we want to personally develop ourselves so we can be at the top of our game, if you will, on an individual level. But then beyond that, once you say, I'm going to take the path of taking a leadership role, you start to think about, well, I still need to continue on developing myself. And there are skills that I need to acquire if I want to be part of this group, this team, and lead this team. Can you speak to sort of that transition for you? And I know you talked about your last 17 years or 18 years there doing what you're doing to some capacity, the shift from going from a non-leadership role into a leadership role, and what that journey was like for you, and sort of some of the aha moments. Maybe you realized, wow, it's not just maybe about me, it's about the group, it's about the common goal we're working on. And I actually have to get everybody to maybe buy into that vision and work together to achieve it.
Right. So one of the things within our organization that we do sometimes within corporate America is we promote from within, right? So we promote to manager, that one day you're a manager, the next day maybe you're a director. You're a director, maybe next day you're VP. So we promote from within. So it becomes a situation where one day you're working with your peers and the next day you're leading your peers.
Yeah.
So that becomes a difficult situation in the beginning because now you're the boss, right? Yeah. So I think in my field that I work in, we do a very poor job of making that transition now. And I've seen it the other way, where we hire from outside and bring into the organization. And that's difficult also because the person coming from outside doesn't necessarily understand the heartbeat of the organization or the team. So he has to come along. So, taking that role as a boss or a leader, so to speak, all of a sudden, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And we can either let that feed our ego, or not, and unfortunately, I don't get to choose my boss and we don't get to choose our boss, but we get to choose how we look at our boss and how we're going to learn from them. Mm-hmm. So I say that because that forms the leader that we become to a certain aspect, right? So we either learn good traits or we learn bad traits and not how to implement those bad traits, and say that I'm not going to be that type of leader, or I'm going to be that type of leader. I try to look back, and it comes with experience also. After 17 and 18 years within an organization, you go back, well, I did learn something from that person, and it wasn't the right thing, the way they treated their organizations, and I'm not going to treat my people that way. So we learn throughout history, throughout our time with those people, how to kind of use those situations that we've learned and what we've not. So you have to have an open mind to go like, what am I going to learn from my leader? How am I going to treat that down the line? And a lot of that is ego driven, and we have to see that within ourselves and go like, all right, I'm the leader, but what's the saying? If you're a leader, you're also in the role of service. Yeah. You serve your people. So that's one of the angles that we have to look at as leaders.
I really like that. I want to dig in on one topic that you mentioned. And I know there's a lot of people who may see this and they're in the individual role, right? Or maybe they're part of the team, but they're not necessarily in that leadership position yet, but they want to get there. Or maybe they found themselves getting there, but they've been thrust into that role when they were part of the team to begin with. Can you talk about any experience or just your thoughts on a transition from going, hey guys, we were all friends and colleagues here, but now I'm taking on this role of leading you, and how that dynamic may change and how you handle that dynamic? I know there are a lot of people who are going to want to be like, I want to build a team, I want to be a leader, but I need to maybe shift from you and I are friends to there's a little bit more there.
Well, it's patience. All right. It's being patient. So, for example, and I do this at the end of October, my manager called me in and he goes, I need you to switch departments today. So I went from a group that I was leading to a whole brand new group in a matter of hours. I walked in and they're like, okay, you're the new boss. I'm like, well, yes, I'm here to lead you because I've been told that you need some help in delivering your product. Mm-hmm. So we had about 2.5 months, about 2 months to deliver the product to the customer. We have on-site customers, so we have interaction with them. So all of a sudden I go from a pretty much easy Monday to like, you got to get going, right? Yeah. And you got a new group, you got to lead. So, but I had to be patient. I had to be patient with the group. I had to be patient with my boss. I had to be patient with myself to understand what's going on within the group, understand each individual in the group, and then understand how to translate my goal or the goal of the company to deliver the product within the time frame to each one of those and how important that was. Then I deliver that goal, and then I have to receive buy-in from each one of them. From like, hey, now it's a common goal. That don't happen in a matter of hours. It may not happen in a matter of days. It may take weeks for you to build that relationship with each employee and build that relationship with a team. So patience, when you're in a leadership role, will pay off big dividends in the future when you go to deliver your product, your service, or whatever you're doing for your customer.
And Chris, how much of that in your experience is I'm going to speak to the collective of the team versus I'm going to work with individuals on an individual basis? And do you ever see situations where some individuals, they buy in when we're going through the team process, whereas others, it takes a more hands-on approach on an individual basis to see, where are the gaps and how can I close or work with that individual based on their personality type?
Yes, certainly. I mean, that happens. We try to do a team meeting in the morning. We get everybody together, and then I'm touching base with each employee several times throughout the day. And that becomes whether that individual buys in as a group or buys in an individual. Of course, it depends on the individual. Now, that's different characteristics that you have to understand about your employees or your team members. Yeah. All right. What makes them who they are. Now, I have people look at it differently. I have the benefit of living about an hour away from my place of employment. All right. And we're in the Dallas metro area, of course. And I drive about an hour. I mean, I didn't drive today because there's a lot of ice out there. So I stayed home today. But that gives me, I can separate myself. I'm not running into my employees at McDonald's or Walmart, or I'm not running into them at the grocery store. Now, some people are like, but on the other hand, I take time to understand each individual employee. Who are you? How many kids do you have? Are you married? Are you not married? Are you ex-military? We have a lot of ex-military. And now being older, like we talked about, understanding the younger generation. They don't buy in like my generation does. A military person may not buy in as a non-military person may not buy in. So understanding each employee and their individual traits and what motivates them to come to work, right? They're going to come to work because they're going to get paid, right? But how do you understand that employee and what motivates them is equal to the buy-in that they're going to give you throughout the day.
Absolutely. And it sounds like there's a lot more than just the task at hand or the vision or what we're working on. It's also the relationship and the individual and who they are and what motivates them. And it's going to be unique for every individual. So if you're dealing with a team or an organization, putting in or investing that time as a leader to understand those individuals and what drives them can be a powerful component on getting everybody to buy into that vision and work collectively together. Let me ask you this, Chris, if you weren't a leader and you were desiring to go in that direction, to take a leadership role, what would be some of your top suggestions or tips on where to get started? Is it, books to read or things to listen to? Is it people to look at and emulate or follow? Where would you point somebody to get started?
Yep, all of that. That's a great question, because Brittany asked me that question a couple of weeks ago about what books I was reading and what was going on. I like to read. I try to set a goal and read each year. So books is good to start, but that's not the only way. With the advent, of course, of social media, those authors who are writing those books and those people are going to social media and transitioning to YouTube and Instagram. And Instagram is great. I like Instagram because you get little snippets. You're not watching an hour, 2-hour video. Audiobooks is another way. I subscribe to audiobook service. So I'm on my commute, I'm listening to books and those leadership books. I have my favorite. I know I've loaned my books to, and I like, give me that book. I'll loan my books, but I'm from a military background and it doesn't necessarily work for all people. I found out. I've loaned that book out to younger people. They're like, I can't relate. I really can't relate to that style. There's plenty of authors out there. I start with books and don't just go to leadership books, but go to self-evaluation books. Start understanding yourself and what makes you desire to be a leader. Why do you want to be a leader? Why do you want to be a member of management within your organization? Like Brittany, she's her own organization. So she has to be the leader, the employee, and the manager. And then also she has a customer base that she touches every day, every week. She does a phenomenal job at it. So, but she looks within herself to understand herself. And then she tries to understand how her leadership style is going to go moving forward. So just don't start with leadership books. Start with self-help books, self-evaluation books, and then understand your ego, understand how that plays a role in yourself and why you want to be a leader.
Yeah, I think those are all amazing points and tips. What I want to do now, I just want to open this up. Ruben, Brittany, Kathy, if you have anything to add or questions, let's do it. Let's have a conversation about this. That's the whole goal of the roundtable. I saw Ruben, your hand go up first, so go on ahead. If you haven't unmuted yourself, ask away. And
Chris, I really relate to what you said. I spent 7 years in the Army Reserve as a medic, and every time I had to share my Jeep with a new commander, he was supposed to be the leader of the week, and I had to adapt to his style or whatever, and then convey it to our troops. But by the same token, I understood early on in my career, I gave it a shot to be a manager. I gave it a shot to be a leader. But I sucked at it. You know what I'm saying? I was more a star within the group.
Right.
I wanted to create my own destiny, and because of that, they saw that and they helped me along the process. So not everybody is going to be the leader role. They want to be within a group, but they want to excel on their own, because there's tremendous amount of responsibility. Just like you laid out, there's so many layers of understanding and psychology that goes into that. And other people rather just pour themselves into the task to be rewarded, to be appreciated. And who does that but a good leader? But thank you so much for your service.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Ruben, I appreciate that. I think there's a difference between a leader and a manager, right? Just because I'm a manager doesn't mean I'm a good leader. Just because I'm a bad leader doesn't mean I'm a good manager. I can manage within a team, but understanding the team and what makes the team work, what makes the individual work is leadership. It's not necessarily managership. I can move one piece or one part over here. I can instruct an employee, hey, move that from there, point A to point B. That's managing. But leadership is different. And I define this to me. Leadership is empowering your team to manage themselves.
I mean, that sounds like a great efficiency that could be had within any organization when you can start to get everybody to buy in and manage themselves as you work towards that common goal. You know, I feel like when you say, and I'm a firm believer of the same thing, there is a difference between being a manager and being a leader. You know, in some cases, there are managers that are dragging everybody along, you know what I mean, because they haven't gotten that buy-in. And everybody's there just to do their job. You know what I mean? Whereas when you have a collective buy-in that's working towards a common goal under great leadership, it's almost amazing what can be accomplished. And when you look at two teams who might be in the same situation, where one is driven by that leader and that collective buy-in versus the other that's sort of there to do their job, you can really see how one stands out from the other. So, Brittany, you had your hand up. Go ahead, ask away or contribute.
Thank you, Chris. Awesome stuff. So one thing that you said that I have a question about is, you said when you were talking about developing your relationships with your team and getting the buy-in from them, you said patience, right? Patience over days, weeks, months, right? But my question is, what if you don't have those weeks, right? What if it has to be in a short-term period, right? Because like, I think of a project manager, sometimes they come into a project and they have to get it done in a week or two, right? So what would you suggest to go, how would you approach it with a short-term approach versus the long-term patience approach?
Thank you for that question. I understand where you're coming from with that. And that's happened also. Communication to the team, what the goal is. Communication that it has to be done in a week. Don't hold anything back. You know, each team member needs to know what the goal is, the time frame it needs to be accomplished in, and what has to be done by the end. And I can understand being thrown into that goal, into that position where you got, hey, you know, you got 40 hours to get this done, and here's a team of 3 people. Like, okay, well, hopefully, you know, everybody understands that, and there has to be a maturity level from each employee and each person, and a little bit of, you know, I try to shield my employees from my boss, and sometimes that always doesn't work. But, you know, you have to be willing to take that. If you don't get it done, or you can't get it, you're pushing, because you have to be the one that understands your employees, not your boss, right? You have to understand them and what motivates them. But yeah, I get it. Communication, I think, would be the short answer to that. Is always, what are we doing? Where are we going? We got to get this done, and take ownership. Take ownership of the task you've been given, right? I had a manager tell me one time, like, don't go out on the floor. Don't go to your team and say, hey, Randy said that we have to get this done in a minute. No, I'm saying we have to get this done in 40 hours, not the boss. Take ownership of that position that you're in. Take responsibility and communicate to your employees moving forward that it has to be done quickly.
I love that.
I have another question too,
What?
if we can. So in terms of bridging the gap between the I'm going to say older person, right, and the younger generation, I find myself going to the older side of that, not being on the younger side of that. And I'm finding it difficult to be more relatable to them. So do you have any tips or tricks to reach the newer people coming up into your group, on your team, whatever, versus, like, for me, I take myself out of it and I'm the younger person. I'm like, okay, so the people who were the older part, I'm like, they just let me be who I was, understood that I was younger and that I didn't have experience in certain life behind me, right? But
Right.
With taking that away, how else can you bridge the gap between the two and become more relatable or get their buy-in? Because it is a very different mindset and a very different approach from even when I was their age, you know what I mean? So do you have any tips on that?
Well, number one, always be yourself. Okay. Always be yourself and be the type of leader that you want to be. Don't don't try to be something you're not. Okay. There was a little video going around last week. You might have saw. I know ER is a college football fan, that the head coach for LSU, Brian Kelly, was doing a dance with a new recruit. I was just kind of taken back about that, by an older gentleman doing some kind of flashy dance with a young recruit. I thought, well, maybe you're not being yourself. Maybe you are being yourself. I don't know Brian Kelly from my next door. I don't know the guy, but maybe he was being himself. But first of all, always be yourself. Okay. Be who you are. And second, with that, ask questions. Have an open ear, right? There's something, and it's up to you as a leader, that there's something that's going to be a common thread. All right. It could be, family, friends, it could be cooking, it could be sports, it could be music, it could be anything. So you kind of owe it to yourself as a leader, and you owe it to your employees to keep an open mind. Hey, I might not like your type of music, but I do like music, and let's see what we can find in common. And it is a challenge. It is a challenge. I'm not saying it's not. I see that moving forward with younger generation. And so always be yourself and ask questions and keep an open ear. See who they're if you have multiple employees, who are they hanging around, right? Who do they sit with at break? Where do they sit with at lunch? Maybe they go to their car. Hey, I see you're are you calling your wife from the car? Everything good? Always be courteous. And that's gonna bridge a gap when you have the opportunity, and when schedule, hey, thanks for doing your job. I mean, it sounds silly, but they appreciate that.
I think that's super powerful. And what I love, Chris, that you're talking about, be yourself, be your authentic self. I also think about, don't try to change them. Let them be themselves as well, and try to identify those strengths that they have and possess. And I think, Chris, you're spot on. You're not going to be able to identify them unless you go and have those conversations and dig a little deeper and be observant. I love the ask questions and listen. That's a huge thing, right? When you start identifying stuff, and then that cream is going to rise to the top within the individual, right? I can see that Brittany is so good at this. She just excels. Can I leverage that over here? Yep. Versus trying to get her to excel in an area that may not be that ideal strength. I think that once people start tapping into their strengths collectively, it's amazing what results. And when we start pointing that out to each other, and then I think the other thing is acknowledgement, Chris, that you mentioned, right? Appreciation and acknowledgement for their efforts and stuff, even though people are different, and we're all different, right? If we celebrate those differences and acknowledge the forward progress, everybody gets committed to pouring more into that.
There's a fine line. So there's a fine line there. I have to be interested in my employee, but I'm not your buddy. I mean, it can go the other way. You can be too close to your employees, and then you lose the position of you're the leader, you're the boss. I think that muddies it up a whole lot. And again, that hour commute allows me to separate just enough that I can be interested. I can ask about your kids. I can be interested. Hey, did Bobby win his basketball game last night? Oh, that means a lot to an employee or a person, individual. But hey, I'm not going to come show up at Bobby's basketball game. I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah. Can you have you ever been in a situation, Chris, or anybody on the call, where you talked about that, right? Like the buddy relationship, but I want to think of it from the perspective of I'm buddy already, and then I change my role, and I sort of have to adjust that dynamic, at least in the situation. Have you had any experience with that? Because I know, especially in a lot of the industries that we serve, there are a lot of people who do work with friends or with family and with stuff like that. And I think at times in a leadership role, the individual who may be being led wants to try and pull it back a little bit to that buddy side of things. And to your point, there needs to be a line in a way. Hey guys, we can be buddy and maybe outside of this situation, but for now, for the goal, for the vision, we need to be focused on, keep our eye on the prize, as I would think.
Ruben may have some interjection on that, because I know him being ex-military, me being ex-military, there was a fine line between fraternization, and that has stayed in my brain for a long time. It's like, sure, you have NCOs and officers, and obviously Ruben was next to the commander at one time, and he was driving him around, and I'm sure he heard a lot. Ruben, do you have any experience on that with fraternizing with employees and buddy or anything of that nature?
I think to give you kind of a background of the career move, there was competition between two of us to be promoted to manager.
Mm-hmm.
And that required a logistical move where they had to buy the house out, they had to set me up or whatever. My manager selected me, and there was a senior in that territory that thought he would get it. Okay. So now when I took a picture of the meeting, he grew a beard. You could tell how he related to, and it really affected him. But I had to deal with him, and I had to manage him, his children, and everything. They gave me the flu, that's how close we were. And all of a sudden, he got the position. 5 years after I did that, I just said no. And like I told you before, my role is being, I guess, a leader in my own right, but not a manager. And he turned out to be a great man. We reversed roles. Now I was working for him after 5 years of that. And because of his management style, I excelled in all levels of the career to be successful. And so again, there's a situation here where reverse roles, you have to adapt, but you got to see the positive aspect of the relationship of that moving forward, not the regrets, not taking back, the jealousy, because that's a killer.
Ruben, in that role reversal, can you talk a little bit about that dichotomy of shifting from you're underneath me to I'm underneath you? I know, Chris, the first thing that comes to my mind would be like ego. You know what I mean? Oh my gosh, like it's really hard to take a step back or something like that, or go, now I have to listen to you as opposed to tell you maybe, or something like that. Any thoughts on that, Ruben?
Yes. Again, being very adaptable.
Yeah.
I understood where it would be, and we had conversations with that. But I fed his ego in that he is an effective manager, and because of that, I was rewarded with the attention and the rewards I got through that relationship. I mean, I excelled. I was happy in the happy zone after I got into my leader role rather than being a manager. Mm-hmm. And of course, he loved that because I contributed to his success as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Chris, you made a comment earlier when you're talking about teams and maybe individuals that might be close to other individuals and leveraging some of that. One thing that I think about in leadership, and maybe this goes back to my days in football, right? You have like the coach who's the leader of the team, or you have the quarterback who may be the leader of the players. I was a lineman and maybe the leader of the lineman type of thing. About leadership and then sort of a sub leadership, right? Like you said, you've got your manager, you managing other people, and how that works together. If I'm really leaning on somebody who's part of a subset of the team, but saying, hey, you should be helping to lead this subset. You've got some more of that. Do you have any thoughts to that?
Yeah, I think so. Within a team, you always, especially within a team that you don't get to pick, right? It's not 8th grade football where you're picking, I want you. You're giving those team members, they're hired in. Maybe you didn't even do the interview. You don't even know who's coming at you, right? But you have that person that you lean on. You have that person that's your go-to guy, right? I have that within my team. I give that piece of paper to Jimmy. Jimmy's going to knock it out. Jimmy's going to get that done for you. You know that. You have to be very careful with that. You have to be, because some of the employees that you don't lean on maybe feel left out. So, and maybe you're pushing Jimmy a little too hard. Yeah. And you need to take some of that away from and push it on some of the lesser involved employees. But yeah, you have your go-to people, and your team knows that. Your team knows that hey, Jimmy's kind of the guy that's going to we work within a collective bargaining agreement. So we have union employees that work for me. So that's really a fine line between the management and the employees. So you have to be careful. We have salaried and then we have hourly workers. So, but you still have your guy you go to, but that doesn't mean you can't leave. You have to leave everybody else out. You need to bring everybody in for that common goal.
Yeah.
And I think Ruben said it, being adaptable, seeing what's coming at you and adapting to the next thing, the next employee coming in, the next goal. Like Brittany said, hey, now I got a week to get this done where I had 2 weeks before. The customer wants it early. I got to be able to adapt, and I can't take that stress and put it on my team. I have to own that myself and then move forward and communicate with employees.
I'm just thinking about a scenario, Chris, and everybody, about team members, and you get to a point where you're like, you're either going to be a part of the team and I'm going to work with you to bring you into the fold and we're going to work towards this common direction, or you get to that point where you're like, you're not a part of this team and we need to let you go or get rid of you. Sometimes I even think it's like firing clients in a way, right? Can you speak to any scenarios or experiences you've had where it's, hey, maybe they're not the right fit? What I attempted to do to try and bring them in versus coming to that decision that we need to find a different team member to replace that role, because independent of what we do, you're just never going to buy into the vision.
Well, I know within my organization, we have clear-cut rules. We have clear-cut goals, and we have clear-cut communication, clear-cut vision, and it's up to me to communicate that that needs to be completed by this date. That needs to be done, but you need to be at this point within the project within this date. And I know Brittany and Ruben may operate into something different, but it's enforcing the discipline, right? As a leader, as part of the team, the leader of the team, you have an obligation to enforce that discipline. If you have a set group of rules, if you have a set group of goals that a team member is not completing, they're not making to, hey, why is everybody else working overtime and you're not working overtime? Where are you? Whoops, where are you at? What are you doing? I mean, I got guys coming in working 50, 55 hours a week, and you're dialing it in at 40, So it's up to you as a leader to enforce that discipline and enforce those goals, communicate, and then hold responsible, right? Communicate the expectation and then hold them responsible for that expectation.
I love that. Okay, a little bit of a curveball here, because I know you said in your past experience as well, you were a leader within a group of volunteers. Little bit different scenario, right? In some cases, I've always thought of that as, in a way, I don't really have as much control over the situation, right? You're volunteering your time. Speak a little bit to trying to get people to buy into that vision, or if that's more important, I would think, when it comes to the volunteer side of things and leading volunteers.
To lead a group of volunteers, you have to be the hardest worker. They have to see your passion for the club, for the organization, for whatever you're leading in that group of volunteers. Maybe it's a group of teenagers picking up trash on the side of the road, where you better pick up twice as much trash as those teenagers, right? They need to see your passion for what you're doing. And to do that, you got to be the hardest worker within the group. I mean, to me, it's that simple.
But I think that is so valuable for anybody who just heard that, right? Like, if you are that, in a way, servant leader, leading by example, doing over and above what everybody else was, showing up first, last to leave type of thing, people see that, and the leader becomes somebody they want to follow. Correct. Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, I can just see how that can bring everybody along in a way.
It doesn't matter. I mean, that's first to arrive, last to leave. And you just have to be the hardest worker, and they see that passion. And then when you go, hey, then you go to delegate, you don't feel so bad about it. They see that, well, okay, I'll take this portion off of his plate because he's working this hard. So you prove that you're the leader, prove that you're the hardest worker, and then it allows you to delegate downfield down to the team.
That's so amazing. What about identifying potential leaders, right? At some point, you may move up into the next role in your organization or in your team. You've been delegating down and you want to bring somebody up into replace your role as that sort of growth happens. Can you speak to some of that? Where have you ever been in a position where who am I going to bring up as that next leader, and some of the traits or things that you look for in individuals who could be good leaders?
Again, I'm looking for those traits that made me successful, right? I like to think that 18 years within an organization and promoted up the line and building teams and moving around, I'm looking for those traits. I'm looking for patience. I'm looking for someone that doesn't have maybe a huge ego. I'm looking how they communicate with their peers. I'm looking at those things. So, and then when I identify those, I'm pulling that individual aside. I'm asking what their goals are. Maybe their goals is not to be a leader. Maybe their goals is just to learn the trait that they're in, the skill that they're in, and then move to a different department. So again, maybe they want, but you don't want that overly eager person. Like, I want to be a leader. I want to be a boss. That's not the ego that you're looking for. That's not the characteristics. So if you're watching your team, if you're watching your individuals and the employees that work for you, you're going to identify those people fairly quickly. And then at that point, you keep watching them and you see what makes them tick. And then maybe you have a side conversation with that person and go, hey, let's get you on the right career path and move you forward. I've seen it. And especially with younger kids, younger guys coming into the career field. It's like Brittany talked about, is like, you see those people, what makes them tick, and let's get you started if that's what you want. You could be a valuable member to our organization.
I love that. And there's almost an aspect of planting the seed within those individuals. Maybe they never even saw themselves as a potential leader, and somebody identified some of those traits within them and planted that seed. You could be this if you want to work towards this, and then foster that person up a little bit. And to your point, watch them and see what's going on and see how they progress within that. Maybe they start coming to you and saying, wow, what you said to me really made a difference or an impact. I want to start to lean into this or pursue this. It's very cool. Go ahead.
And maybe they don't want to be a leader. Maybe they don't, but you see that and they can offer that to the organization. And my goals have changed after 17, 18 years within a company. My goals on how to be a leader, how to be a manager, they've changed over time. And now I'm much more comfortable in the role. I'm much more comfortable getting my butt chewed, than I was 17 years ago. I know it's nothing personal. It's just business. And that was a very hard lesson for me to learn. It's just business. It's nothing personal. And I try to, shield that for my employees, but my goals as a leader and as a manager has changed tenfold over since I was put in that role.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to open this up for any last questions or comments from anybody. I know we're approaching the top of the hour here. Ruben, Kathy, anything to add or questions you might have?
Hey, Chris, you mentioned that leaders are readers. Could you maybe sometime could we give me your email address to connect? We have a book review organization that meets weekly, and I always like to suggest different topics because I really believe that our country, the way it is now, is going to be really shaped by our youth and the employees on what their choices are going forward. And I think I'm trying to introduce reading to a younger generation too. And it's really different on different between TikTok and something that they have to look actually and read, Right. But I would appreciate your list of what you read.
Yeah, I'll get with you offline, or we'll set up a phone call or a Zoom one-on-one here in the next couple of days or something like that, and we can go over some of that stuff.
Perfect.
Be happy to.
Well, and for anybody who's watching this, what's the best way to get a hold of you? I don't know if you have your shuffle card or if you can show a QR, or maybe Kathy has one up that she can share for anybody who might want to connect.
We've been working on that this morning, so I know she's around here somewhere. So I think she's getting one set up for me, so we can share
we'll
that.
get a link posted out, or when we get the replay, we'll put a comment in there for anybody who wants to connect or reach out to Chris here. Ruben, to your point, I think knowledge transfer is so valuable. So valuable. And I think one of the things that I've learned, and I've been a person, to be honest, who struggled with reading, right? I'm dyslexic. I have trouble. It takes me like 5 minutes to read one page. But when I found a way to absorb or transfer that knowledge, maybe in a different mechanism, maybe it's video, maybe it's audio, maybe it's book, lean into that person and find what works for them. I know the younger generation, I'm on the older side of the millennial population. Now you've got like all the other generations coming up after that. It's trying to find out what mechanisms are working for them. And then for me, I think there's a gap between knowledge transfer and entertainment, right? We see a lot of people get stuck in that entertainment trap. They're absorbing all that stuff, even if that platform offers some knowledge transfer. And then sometimes it's just sitting down with them, having a conversation, imparting some of that wisdom. I know, Chris, you mentioned that earlier in the conversation, when you're talking to maybe your leader, somebody above you, or who you're helping and supporting, and keeping that open mind and those open ears to learn from them or to learn from what their examples are. So really powerful stuff, guys.
Hey, ER, thanks for having me on today. I really enjoyed it. And again, we'll put a link up there so anybody wants to get in touch with me. I love the conversation of leadership and team building. So anytime, but I appreciate you having me on today.
Well, we really appreciate you. Again, I want to thank you and Ruben for your guys' service and everything, and also for the leadership that you provide, all of the knowledge that you provided to everybody today. We'll get that link out there, and anybody who wants to connect with Chris or has questions, please feel free to do so. Again, this was just Thursday Mastermind Roundtable. I think it's awesome when we can get a group of people together to have a conversation, to talk about a topic. And I know I learned a ton today. So I really appreciate all of that information. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Kathy.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody.